Rebecca, did you say you could see my title slide?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Hi,
All good.
everyone.
Hi, everyone.
All right, we'll get started. Thank you, everyone, for attending the CNS Connect webinar today. My name is Amy Smith. I'm the Director of Certifications for the ANA and the BCNS. Today, I am joined by Rebecca Snow, who's going to share her expertise on community workshops that wow, leverage community education to network and build your practice. If you are a CNS, you can get 1 CE for today's presentation, and I will put a survey in the chat at the end of the presentation for you to get your certificate. If you have questions during the presentation, go ahead and feel free to use the chat in the Q&A, and please feel free to put any interactive conversation in there, or if you have questions. So let me introduce our speaker. Rebecca's been with us several times before, but I will let you all know a little bit about her. Rebecca is a mentor, nutritionist, herbalist, and educator who has been practicing clinical nutrition and herbalism for 18 years. In addition to consulting with individuals about nutrition, health, dietary, and herbal supplements, Rebecca runs a mentorship program called the Nutrition and Herbal Collective. Rebecca was founding director of the Master of Science in Nutrition and Integrative Health at MUIH, where she worked at the university for 10 years in a variety of roles, including clinical supervisor and administrator. She practiced for 5 years in an integrative medical practice that specializes in chronic infection and disease. She holds a master's in science and herbal medicine from MUIH, and she completed an International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society preceptorship. She's a CNS and an LDN in the state of Maryland and a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. She also serves as chair of the board of dietetic practice in the state of Maryland. So thank you, Rebecca, for joining us. Let me stop sharing and I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Amy. I'm going to share my screen and we'll start our talk on community workshops, which is a great topic because it applies to CNSs, it applies to CNS candidates, and some people, they find they fall in love more with community workshops than one-on-one practice. So it is definitely a huge area of interest for us nutritionists. I'm happy to be with you all here today, so thank you for your listening. I am going to open it up for questions at the end. And we are going to talk about community workshops, do's and don'ts, and how to leverage them to have the biggest impact for you on your private practice and to make a difference to connect with your audience. So why are we talking about this? I don't know about you, but like I haven't always been super comfortable with giving workshops and lectures and webinars. I've definitely grown into it. I'm going to tell you some of my own challenges along the way. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. If you know me, you know that I'm pretty transparent about my own challenges because I feel like that is going to benefit other people. So when I see this picture, I'm like, I think about, it brings back memories of like armpit sweat and racing heart, giving a talk in front of the class. So for some people, public speaking is a huge barrier, right? And there's so many great workshops out there. I was doing some digging. University of Colorado has this free course on public speaking. I might actually do it at some time. I want to check it out. But if you really do struggle with kind of fears around public speaking, then there's ways to, work through that. But why are we talking about community workshops? I mean, for CNS candidates, it's a great way to connect to your audience, to get CNS SPE hours, because for the CNS, if you're targeting a specific population, it's a wonderful way to complement one-on-one practice. You build your name through collaborations and marketing. You connect to people, you meet potential clients, you build your newsletter list, and you earn money, which, let's face it, that's why we're doing a career, because we want to earn money. So lots of benefits from doing public speaking. So that's why we're talking about it. Okay, this is actually my 20th year, 2023. I started practicing in 2003. I was doing a review of photos of the last 20 years because I was pulling together social media posts and I thought, oh, this is good. What are all the ways I've done community education over the last 20 years? There's a picture of me up in the top left in my garden with a bunch of people at my house doing an herb garden tour, talking about different herbs. And there I am in the bottom left doing a talk. I did an Herbs for Nutritionists course, a 25-hour course, over 5 years ago. I look pretty young there. And we were in my house doing a full weekend workshop. That was pre-COVID. I haven't done an in my house workshop in a long time. Now it is all virtual, but there in the bottom, I led some community programming for my daughter's school. We were teaching kids how to make smoothies and cut up vegetables. I do a lot of Facebook Lives and I do a lot of webinars now. When I first started doing webinars, it was so weird because there was no live person there to like give you dynamic feedback. So I've learned you kind of have to pretend you're with live people to get that like excitement and enthusiasm going. But the reason I have this slide is just to point out that community workshops have many faces, and it doesn't have to be you in front of an audience with a PowerPoint. It can be you leading a mindfulness circle, taking people on a plant walk, doing a cooking demo, walking a group of people through a grocery store tour. You can just talk to folks. You don't have to have a PowerPoint. You could do a mocktail demo in your kitchen with some neighbors. That's community education. There's lots of ways to do community education. So we definitely want to think about all the possibilities, particularly if you are nervous about public speaking. Creating a more casual, comfortable environment for yourself will make it easier to enjoy the process because, you know, it's not just about building our business and getting our name out there and, teaching people. It's also we want to enjoy what we're doing. And so finding the platform that you enjoy for community education, I think is super important. So lots of places you can give talks, right? Lots of possibilities from community centers, senior centers, to different fitness clubs, Pilates studios. You can think, and I think this is just in your slide deck. So when you're brainstorming places to collaborate with, you have some ideas here of what what kinds of collaborations you can look at. Okay, so I did want to tell you some stories. So my worst talk ever. Now, why do I have a teacher with her pants falling down? Because once when I was co-teaching with my colleague Amma, we were standing in front of a group. We were doing a mindful eating course, and it was a day-long seminar. And her pants just fell down in front of the class. So we just bust out laughing. I mean, I loved teaching with Amma. She was such a gem, and we both had a very kind of easy way of being, and we like to laugh at ourselves. So I just tell that story because mistakes happen, and we just have to embrace them and turn lemons into lemonade. But seriously, the worst talk I ever gave, it was my very first talk as a graduate. I had just gotten my master's degree, and I was invited by this hospital because I was one of the first graduates from Maryland University of Integrative Health from their herbal medicine program, and there was only 10 of us. And I got invited to do this talk at this hospital center where they were doing like a whole day of education on integrative health and alternative health for lay people. And I was so excited and so nervous, and I picked the wrong topic. I decided to teach about urban drug interactions to a group of lay people at a day-long conference. So wrong topic, even though you're at a conference, people can choose to come to your talk or not. And I got 10 people in a very large space. So not many people were interested in my talk. And I swear during that talk, 2 people were kind of snoozing. So I learned by my mistake that not only did I pick the wrong topic, but the content was way too technical. I wanted to teach people about this topic, but this is not what people were interested in. And so this is so common, particularly right after you get your degree, because you've just been in this highly academic setting and you want to, share what you know with the world, but sometimes it's a miss. What we want to teach people is not what they want to hear about. And also, if we mimic our community education after our academic education, we're going to miss the mark. So a lot of times when I'm working with interns in my mentorship program, I'm scaling them back away from too much technical talk, trying to speak more towards the layperson, and really trying to reframe away from what you want to teach to what does your client want to hear about. So that leads to the 3 main things we're gonna talk about is choosing your topics, how much information to share, how to stay on target with the content that you're delivering, so it's not too technical, not too much information, and how to leverage your talks as an opportunity for your business to increase your clients. Okay, so we want to choose a good topic. I have stocked this webinar full of memes. I'm really into the memes today. Someone says they don't eat fruit because it has too much sugar. This is my face when. Yes. So how to choose a good topic. Some things to think about. What are some stereotypical things that nutritionists talk about? Sugar is bad. Alcohol is bad. Coffee is bad. Eat your vegetables. Eat your fruits. Low carb. Like, what are the kind of, topics du jour today? I'm all about shaking it up. Like, bring in some things that people aren't taught. What are people not talking about? People aren't talking about carbs are good. People are not talking about the health benefits of coffee. So it's good to shake things up and to not be cliche. So in order to choose a topic, we do have to identify our audience. Who is your target audience? And I probably sound like a broken record because I'm sure I say this on every business and marketing type talk. One thing I'm going to send with the follow-up email, Amy's going to send the slides. We'll send an ICA workbook, which is your ideal client avatar workbook that you can work through if you've never done that. It's something we put in our onboarding course for our interns. It just helps you hone in on who's your target audience. It's a very common mistake. People don't want to niche, but niching is so crucial to having a clear voice, a clear message. I mean, how are you going to figure out where to give a talk until you know who your audience is? Because once you know who your audience is, you know where they hang out, what questions do they ask, and what they value. So in order to learn about what your clients want to hear about, you have to narrow down your client base. So chime in the chat if you have a niche, throw it out there. I want to hear about folks' niches. Oops, let me go back a sec. So yes, please do chime about that. And once you know your niche, you can start to ask questions about where they hang out. Oh, metabolic health, Hashimoto's. Great. Okay, still looking for a niche. So definitely do the workbook. Women's hormone health, awesome. Hormonal issues, yep. Okay. Kiddos, yes. Love working with special needs kiddos. Okay, seniors, yes, great. Seniors work at, hang out at senior centers, special needs kiddos. You're going to find you really want to connect with the parents. So autism support groups or neurodivergent support groups. metabolic health and cardiometabolic health, there often is a connection to hospital care because people might be using CGMs. They might want to do some diabetes education. Women's health, there often are fertility centers. You can connect with OBGYN clinics. So you want to start thinking about where your client's hanging out. What questions do they ask? Go to go to Reddit, go to Facebook support groups, and look at those conversations. I was just talking to an intern today that wants to work with mast cell. So I showed her this mast cell support group, and I'm like, dive in there. What are people talking about? They often talk about like, what lotions can I use because this lotion is making me break out? Or what are safe body care products? Can you all find a cracker that you can eat? So like these are the things people are talking about on that mast cell support group. So you want to find out what is your client interested in? Dive in there and find out. I love all these niches. I think with hormonal health, kind of getting a little bit more specific. And with seniors, I think you could even get a little bit more specific if you wanted to, maybe around bone health or dementia care, dementia prevention. Great list. Thank you all for chiming in. Now, I once heard a public health speaker say that there really are, when they measure metrics of what drives people's food choices, there's really kind of 4 parameters: cost, health, taste, and convenience. As nutritionists, we tend to approach dietary changes for our clients with health in mind. Well, this is going to help you with your health, drink more water, eat more greens. But when most lay people are asked what drives their dietary choices, health tends to rank number 4. For nutritionists, we tend to put health number 1. So we want to start thinking like a client. Like my clients are probably more interested than cost, taste, and convenience and health. So how am I going to design content for what they're interested in? Let's take one of these examples, like perimenopause. We're thinking about, or menopause, we're thinking about hot flashes, but often hot flashes, that may not be the thing people are talking about. People might be talking about weight gain or mood changes or hair loss. So really kind of, getting into that. Okay. So when you choose a topic, you want to get specific. We really don't want to teach classes on nutrition, too broad, macronutrients. Clients aren't really interested in coming to a talk on healthy fats or healthy carbs. That's kind of modeling our education after our academic education, which is like learning about the macros. We're learning about the micros. We can incorporate macros and micros into our talk, and we're going to. And that's the interesting thing, is that a lot of topics are going to have the same content. If I'm teaching about healthy weight and perimenopause versus, getting my fasting blood sugar under 100 for a diabetic or a pre-diabetic rather, we're going to be talking about a lot of the same concepts in those 2 talks, but it's really who's the target audience. So get really specific. And let's talk about, so what I'd like people to do is just throw out some talks you're thinking about giving in the community. Yes. So throw some things out there. Inflammation. Awesome. Gestational diabetes. Perfect. Okay. So for gestational diabetes, some things, so people might be thinking about prevention. Often people who are interested in that topic probably maybe had a previous birth with gestational diabetes. Maybe they have, a family history of that. So I love to run all my talk titles through Monster Insights. Quick tip, watch the video on the Resource Hub, how to choose a talk title. And I'll include that link in the follow-up as well, along with the ICA workbook. I highly recommend watching that. So you want to choose strong words in your talk title. So an example for gestational diabetes might be choosing food, choosing or top 10 foods to help prevent gestational diabetes in pregnancy, or everything you need to know about preventing and caring for yourself, or gestational diabetes, everything you need to know about caring and for yourself and preventing it, or something like that. So throwing around some talk titles there. I like how specific people are getting. Eating healthy on a budget, I'd want to go a little bit more. Who's the audience? Is it seniors? Is it families? Feeding your family on a budget. So get a little bit more targeted there. Post-running recovery in female teen athletes. That is an awesome topic title because it's very specific. You can talk about electrolytes. You can talk about foods, snacks. Love it. Dietary factors that impact pain and physical therapy outcomes. Awesome. Run that through Monster Insights. Now that sounds like a talk title for a PT group. Like if you were doing a collegial talk to PTs, Sarah, and you wanted to promote yourself and your services. I think with a client, you'd probably want to check the reading level on that. So I would also say for your talk titles, you want to speak at a 4th grade reading level. And dietary factors that impact pain and physical therapy outcomes, that's more of an academic talk title. So that's probably closer above a 9th grade reading level. So that talk title is good for academic type talks. So 2 things, Monster Insights Headline Analyzer, and you can get the Hemingway app on your computer and run your content, like your talk titles, through that and see what reading level you're at, because we generally want to design for a 4th grade reading level. Okay, here are some sample talk titles. 5 power foods for strong and healthy bones, whole food desserts with yum factor, eating for diabetes, health hacks for insomnia, food, sun, and more, constipation 101, healthy poo and foods that make things move. So, have fun with it. Actually, about a year ago, Camille did a talk on Community Talks that's on YouTube for CNS Connect, and her talk was awesome. And she recommended do a deep brainstorm, come up with 10, 15 talk titles, like what I've sampled here, and just keep going. So that would be awesome. Okay, so I would recommend playing with your titles, and we can talk more about examples as we get when I open it up for questions. YouTube link with the resources. Okay, so the next tip, the mistake I made in my example was being too technical for lay people. And here's Homer, me realizing halfway through a conversation that I've been oversharing information. Okay, so let's talk about the content of the talk and how to make it a good amount of content for your audience. Okay, first, before you start generating content, you want to plan and organize. You don't want to start generating content until you've organized it, okay? Organize your thoughts. So don't jump right in, write learning outcomes. You want to write a couple learning outcomes for your talk. What is not a good learning outcome? So the more specific and concrete you can get with your learning outcomes for your talks, the better. Here's Bloom's taxonomy. And, having an outcome like understand what a low glycemic diet is very general, right? And it isn't as practical for a client as applying that content in their life. So a better objective might be to apply low glycemic eating to planning breakfast for a family. That's a more concrete learning objective for a talk. Another very general one might be understand blood sugar and insulin resistance. And certainly we want to give people an understanding of those things, and you have to really help them understand how to eat differently. But a more concrete, specific objective might be choose 3 foods that help participants control blood sugar and work to reverse diabetes. So I recommend writing several learning outcomes for your talk before you create the content, because I think another big mistake people make is we're very driven by what we want to teach people, but not as much thinking about what can people actually get out of this talk in an hour's time. What's a concrete objective that somebody could really achieve in 1 hour lecture about blood sugar and prediabetes? So keep it practical, stay directed to the topic at hand, create an outline, and trim, 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 trim. Because usually the outline, you're throwing things in there. Oh, but I want to talk about sleep. Oh, but I want to talk about body care products. Oh, I want to make sure I give them this handout. Remember, you're going to be doing talks for the rest of your career, which we all hope is 20 to 30 years long and very successful. So you have lots of time to educate people. Keep it simple. Less is more when it comes to talks. Now, I do know the feeling of being nervous and wanting to have enough content prepared in case you run out of time, because we've all had those moments where our mind just goes blank and we're like, oh my gosh, what do I talk about? So you can prep additional content to be shared if you run out of time. But as far as the core meat of your lecture, of your talk or your workshop, I would try and keep it simple. Okay, so avoid getting too technical. I love the steroid biosynthesis pathway chart when I'm talking about hormone health. It's so beautiful, but it's like, it's really complex. It's not really appropriate for a community talk. Do I use it when I'm talking to interns? Totally, because I'm talking to colleagues who have a master's degree, so we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the biochemical pathways. But when we're talking to lay people, we don't want to get overly technical or they're going to tune out. Now, could I show lay people this chart? Yes. I do think throwing in little nuggets of a research study or, showing them the context. Why do I run? So if I was doing a talk for fertility, let's say, I could see showing people this chart as a context of understanding of why we run a precision analytical test, because we're trying to gather information of downstream, what's happening with your hormones downstream. So I might show this chart just as a way to give a context of understanding, but I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of aromatase inhibitors and, the cortisol steal for progesterone. I mean, and like look at, CYP1A1 pathway, et cetera. So when you're presenting, if your PowerPoint looks like something you would have had at Western States when you were getting your master's degree, then you've gone too technical. Again, 4th grade reading level, run your content through that. How to incorporate research. I personally think it's helpful to reference 2 or 3 studies. Find some interesting studies that show interesting point of views that people might not have heard of. Like when you're talking about hydration, look at the 8x8, review, which suggests that people kind of over recommend hydration. So, bring in a few, bring your 2 or 3 and give a layperson understanding of what you're talking about. But as far as fancy charts, try to avoid loading up your PowerPoint with lots of fancy charts. But again, Sarah Brown, if you're teaching, PTs and you're doing that talk to PTs, then you might get a little fancier with your charts. Okay. So avoid death by PowerPoint. Hopefully I haven't killed you all with my PowerPoint. I've tried to include lots of fancy fun memes. This is a sample slide, high glycemic foods. Like a lot of my interns are on the call. When I teach to interns, I'm doing super technical as much as I can, but when I'm teaching community, I like to do lots of images because I feel like an image is 1,000 words. So when I'm teaching people about high glycemic foods, I love using pictures of foods, examples. It brings up questions. People engage with the content more, the more they see pictures. Definitely don't read your slides. Don't read your slides word for word. Use images and graphics to represent material. Remember, an image is 1,000, is like 1,000 words. I love using presenter tools. So when I have, if I'm nervous about explaining a concept, maybe I'm explaining a concept that, you know, is kind of at my capacity of understanding, then yes, I love using presenter tools so that I have notes for myself. So I might even have like quotes from a study that I could reference if I needed to. So yes, use your presenter tools. If you're worried about like forgetting what you're going to say, or you need some extra notes there. Avoid information overload. Stick to your topic, stay on time. I'm not very good with that, but I am going to be today. I estimate about 2 minutes per slide. So this talk, we'll wrap up at least at 4:50 and have 10 minutes for questions. I have 23 slides. So, more is not better. You can use a slide as a jumping off point to talk about things. Presenter tools are when you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or Google Slides, there are notes, and I can show you when I stop sharing my screen, Yana, so you can see that. So there's a little section in a PowerPoint or Canva, slideshow or Google Slides where presenters can see the notes, but the audience cannot see the notes, and that can be helpful. And definitely leave time for Q&A. Okay. Okay, so that is content. Outline, create objectives and write your outline. Don't skip that part. It's easy to skip it because it doesn't like get your PowerPoint created. Do you know what I mean? But it is so important to staying on topic, to not overdoing the amount of information you're giving. How do you leverage the workshop to grow your business? Okay. So, we don't want to be kind of, I'm not a big salesperson. I don't like shameless promotion. Actually, I've done more social media in the last 2 years than I've ever done, and it was like a stretch for me. It wasn't super easy. So I think with leveraging the workshop, promotion comes more easily to some than others, but there definitely are ways to use community education without it feeling sleazy, kind of like you're pushing yourself on people. We don't want to feel that way. So some things to think about. Is your newsletter list big enough that you could promote your own talk? So if you only have 10 people on your newsletter list, that's not enough people to promote your own talk. You definitely need to partner. Let's say you have 100 or more people on your newsletter list. I mean, I would say at max, you might get 10 people from those 100 people. So you have to think about partnering with another organization when your newsletter list is on the smaller side so that you can get butts in the seats. So collaborations. We looked at a list of all the different places you could potentially collaborate with when you are looking at doing talks, which I highly recommend. When you do those collaborations, you do want to ask about promotion. How many social media posts are going to go out about the talk? How many, is it going to be posted on a website? Is it going to go out in print? Are there newsletters that are going to go out? So what does the promotional look like, and how many newsletters are going to be sent out about the talk? Now, one thing that I've learned is how many newsletters you do need to send out when you're promoting a talk. So let's say you have a newsletter list of 200. You're giving a talk on recovery for runners, and your target audience they're runners. So, most of the people on your list have an interest in physical activity and running. You're going to want to send out probably ideally at least 3 newsletters to your target audience to promote your talk, to get your best click rate and open rate, to really get people engaged in it. and you want to cross post, you want to have it on your website, cross post on social media. If your talk is free, you can often leverage a lot of community locations to cross post your talk when you're doing free community education. When is it beneficial to do it free? I think it really depends on your comfortability. Certainly when you're getting your SPE hours, you benefit by getting hours done. But when you're making a living at this, you need to make a living. And with collaborations with other organizations, your name is going to go out there. So it is free promo. You get to connect to an audience. So you do get potential clients. But I don't recommend doing a lot of free talks if there isn't a lot of benefit for promotion for you. The only times I do free talks now are support groups. So like I've spoken to a Lyme disease support group twice in the last 3 years, and I've spoken at a mast cell support group. And all those times they were not paid because really it's a grassroots organization that has no money. And it's my target audience. And every time I've done that, I've gotten clients out of it. So speaking to a support group is probably my one exception for speaking free. All other times I would bill for speaking. So definitely ask about promotions when you're partnering with organizations and thinking about the pros, cons of payment, how much you're asking for payment. If you are looking to do collaborations, I wouldn't talk about payment in the first communication, whether you're popping an email out, giving them a call, or dropping by. I would first just explore the possibility of giving a talk to their community, and then further down the road, kind of get into the payment conversation. So, more about leveraging 101. Always introduce yourself. Amy very nicely introduced me today, but who are you and what do you do? I'm Rebecca Snow. I'm an herbalist nutritionist and I mentor CNS candidates. So that's what, just who you are, what you do. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing your bio, but you do want to connect with your audience. You want to tell them, and this is a good time to give your elevator pitch. That's another good free video on our resource hub is how to design your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do? I would highly recommend doing that, practicing it, in your bathroom in front of a mirror, get comfortable with it. Definitely give handouts, whether they're digital or print, have your contact information there, your logo, so people can look you up. Include your contact info on your slides. Always follow up with a resource and ask folks if they want to be on your newsletter list. If you're in person, you can pass around a clipboard. If you're virtual, you can, in your follow-up communications, give a sign up for your newsletter. So always, whenever you do your talks, leverage folks, asking them to sign up on your newsletter. What if you've never sent out a newsletter in your entire life? That's okay. Even if you've never sent out a newsletter and you don't expect yourself to have time for the next 2 or 3 months, still get emails, still build your newsletter list, because when you're ready, you can start using that. The resource hub I'm talking about is the Nutrition Herbal Collective's resource hub. I'm going to send you all the links I reference. Amy put the YouTube video that Camille did on Community Talks in the chat. So yeah. Okay, so the other thing, so that's all kind of more direct promotion, but indirect promotion, the talk itself is going to connect you to potential clients. When you show that you care about people, that you're interested in helping them, that you have something to offer, you have information and resources that are valuable to your potential clients, they're going to see you as a resource and an expert, and it's going to connect you to them. This is one of my favorite quotes. My mom used this quote a lot. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. One of my strategies, because if I'm giving a really big talk, and early on in my career when I gave talks, I was very nervous. I'm not as nervous today. Doing a talk like this, I'm not really that nervous, but like if I do a big conference talk, I can get extremely nervous. So one of the things that helps me is actually connecting to why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I care about what I'm doing, and connecting. Remember that there are people in the audience who are people and that I want to connect with them. And that always helps me get over my nerves. I think this is also really important as far as a direction to go when you're designing your talk. So one of my theories and thoughts is that when you are designing community education, appeal to different layers of people, appeal to their mind, appeal to their heart, appeal to their stomach, and appeal to their sensory, right? So if you have people in person, it's a lot easier to do this. You can bring sample foods, you can make sample foods, you can prep food in front of them. But let's say we were doing a talk on label reading today, like I could have little samples of food here with me showing you, well, here I've got my steam distilled hydrosol, but so you can bring things, you can have your participants in your webinar bring something from their pantry. Maybe you're talking about pantry rehab and everybody brings something from their pantry and there's a show and tell that people do. So, and you're having people like smell things and read things and look at things. So engagement. If you are in person, I highly recommend having tangible things people can touch, smell, and taste. Most of my, as I said, I'm like 100% virtual now. So really the only thing I can do is appeal to the mind and the heart, but we can talk about food and we can talk about engaging with food. I love telling stories and about myself, about my clients, about my interns. Telling stories is super powerful. It reminds people that you're a practitioner. So when you're giving your talk, you can say things like, when I see people in my practice, we run this lab. Or when I see people in my practice, I like to get a 3-day diary and do dietary analysis because some of the nutrients that I'm looking at are X, Y, and Z. So I think the best way to promote yourself in community education is to reference your clinical practice, tell stories. You know, you're educating people and you want to answer their questions, but you also want to leave them with some questions. Because, if somebody asks you, what do I eat if I have SIBO? It's like, well, the low FODMAP diet is super helpful, but some people need more than that. Some people need the low FODMAP plus a low SCD. Still, other people might have a hydrogen sulfate positive SIBO test, which is more rare, but those folks might have to reduce sulfates. So see, I've answered the question, but I've also educated the person who's at my workshop, and now they know more than they used to, and they still have more questions. Because as we know in this field of nutrition, there's always more to learn. So we're helping people, we're answering their questions, but we're also pointing to what they don't know. Because ultimately, you don't want people leaving your community workshop feeling like they know everything there is to know about the topic. You want them to have answers, you want them to be better informed, but you also want them to be curious and to have more questions too, because that's what leads them to wanting one-on-one nutritional consulting with you, if that's what you're going for. You might actually have group programming you want to lead them to, or other types of business resources. So appeal to different parts of people, because as we know, there are different types of learners. Some people are tactile learners, some people are auditory learners, some people are visual learners. I love doing PowerPoints because I'm a visual learner. If I sit and watch a talking head for an hour, I will zone out. So for me, PowerPoints I like doing them, but they're not for everybody. So you have to, find how you best teach and how your clients want to learn. So you probably have some imposter syndrome, like we all do. So some of my favorite things: act as if, you don't feel confident, just pretend you are. Prep time. Prep time helps me feel more confident. If I haven't looked at the topic in a while, I want to dive in a little bit and, chew it up and get comfortable with it. And then I feel like I'm teaching from the top third of the glacier that's above the water, and that my knowledge down here, I'm not necessarily sharing all of that. I'm just sharing what's on the top, right? And then, as I said, connect it to your desire to help people to let go of your ego, because that nervousness is really our ego, right? It's like we want to know. And if we can remember that we're a facilitator of people getting better, we can kind of let go of that ego part of ourselves and just connect to people. And everybody gets questions they don't know the answer to. It's totally normal to feel that way. And really, like I'm reading Brene Brown's Daring Greatly right now, and it's like we have so much power and vulnerability. I don't know the answer to that. That is a great question, but let's find out, right? So there is power and vulnerability. Okay, so just take a few more minutes and then we'll open it up for questions. So we want to engage our audience, and we don't just want, oh my gosh, engage our audience. I have engaged you with the chat, but actually, speaking of audience engagement, Amy has a poll for you. Amy, will you throw that poll out there so we can see where people, so what best describes you? I have never given a workshop before. I've given a few classes and I'm still growing in my skills. I give workshops regularly and I want to leverage my workshops for more clients. And I give workshops like a boss. So go ahead and vote on that.
Okay, we've got a few more people.
Cool. Thank you. While we are polling you, well, I'll give you a minute. Take a sip of water.
Okay, almost everybody's answered. So we're going to assume those that are engaging have engaged. So 48% said, I've never given a workshop before. 40% said they've given a few classes and are still growing. 12% said they give workshops regularly. And no one thinks they give workshops like a boss.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really helpful. I mean, I figured not a lot of people are going to say I give workshops like a boss because, we're not a super prideful group here. And you probably don't want to go to a class on workshops if you feel like you give workshops like a boss. So that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, 48% have never given a workshop before. So this is a 46%. That's great information. So we really want you to feel more confident going into your first workshop. And so most of you have either done a few classes or never given a workshop. And a very small percentage have given a number of workshops. So it's important to feel confident. And I think if you get one thing out of this talk, it would be redesigning your concept of what a community workshop is. If it's walking a few people through a grocery store or hanging out in your kitchen with some neighbors, talking about making kombucha, I would redefine what community workshop is for you and how that can work for who your audience is, because I think that's one of the best ways to debunk it, make it feel less monumental, huge kind of thing you have to overcome or to start. So definitely ask your audience questions. You want to engage with your audience because, as you know from like studying for tests, we don't learn that much just by hearing things. We have to engage with material. Give people time to think about something. Give people a reflective question to think about. As you're designing if you're creating a PowerPoint or you're designing your outline, come up with points of engagement. Here's a question I want to ask the group. Here's a reflective exercise they can do. Here's a mindful eating exercise we can throw in there. So weave in mindfulness exercising or mindfulness exercises, breathing exercises. Play a game or give people a quiz to do. Ask them to apply the learning in the session. Give them a task. So tell me what you're eating for breakfast. Okay, now how can you make that more nutrient dense? What can you do to make that less high glycemic? Give people a task to do and then they can write it down and they can come back as a group and tell you what they did. And so have people apply what you're teaching them in the session. You can break people into small groups. I find people don't really like breakout groups, but it depends on how long the workshop is. You know, if it's an hour, people aren't too fond of breakout sessions, but if you're together for several hours, breakout groups are super helpful. The more engagement you build into your talk, the less you have to talk, which if you're nervous about talking is super helpful. One of my interns came up with she did this or that. So like she was teaching about sugar content. So she would have two pictures, you know, vitamin water or orange juice, which one has more sugar? And the audience has to guess. You know, Special K or Fruit Loops, which one has more sugar? It's, you know, having fun games like that engages the audience and helps them apply what they're learning right then and there. Refer to your practice, indirect promotion. You know, don't just take the more common road. Look at pros and cons. Like, yes, coffee is potentially dehydrating. It can interfere with sleep, but look at these studies on cancer prevention and antioxidant benefits of coffee. So when you're presenting information, try and be a little bit, you know, not provocative, but, you know, like think outside the box, be more on the cutting edge. And I think that you'll get more engagement from your audience. And as we said, leave folks with questions as well as answers. Okay, perfect timing. We've got 8 minutes for questions. And there was a bunch of questions that came up that I didn't get a chance to
I think one of the
answer.
first ones, Rebecca, was about how much do you bill or how do you figure out how much to bill for speaking?
Yeah, so I would not accept less than $100 an hour. I think that, you know, I would be asking for, I mean, for a community workshop, and let's go back to actually, here you can see presenter tools. Let me escape. Okay, so can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
So these are my presenter tools because somebody was asking. Yeah, so like I have some questions here I could ask the group that if I was having trouble engaging the group, you know, these are some questions I could throw out. So these are notes to myself that I do to help kind of guide me, particularly if there's like lulls or maybe people aren't engaging, then I can throw a question out. So those are what presenter tools are. It's really tough to know what to bill. I have to admit, I'm not fully got my finger on the pulse of that. I mean, corporate wellness is like its whole nother gig that is in, you know, that you really don't want to charge less than 1,000 in corporate wellness, right? For community talks, you're going to be working with potentially the budget of the government or nonprofit organization or community organization. But I would say that you want to ask somewhere in the range of 100 to 250 for more community oriented. But if you're working with a business that's charging clients like a yoga center or a fitness center, you should really come up with a percentage split. So it might be, there might be a base rate of 150 or 200, and then all income made over a certain amount, you do a percentage split with. That would be one model for a talk. Okay. And then other questions.
No, I think that was the only one that I saw that we missed.
Oh, Yenna said what to talk about with first responders. So first responders are under a tremendous amount of stress. They tend to eat a lot of processed foods and they don't have a lot of time for prepping food. So I think talking about ways to eat to support healthy sleep, stress response, to healthy snacks to choose when you're at a 7-Eleven or a convenience store, like what options are there for you? That would be a great talk. Healthy snacking for first responders. Is that your target audience, Yana? Okay, so what other questions do you have? Are you struggling to come up with a talk title? What are some hurdles people are experiencing, or is there anything that is a block for you in moving forward with giving a community talk?
You must have covered everything so well. No one's got any.
All right, cool.
Public speaking is kryptonite. I know a lot of people struggle with public speaking. I'm one of those people.
Uh-huh. I mean, it can be intimidating, yes. So Yaxari, is there a format that feels less intimidating? Like would prepping food or, you know, doing a grocery store tour or doing a pantry rehab where you like show people 10 food swaps, does that feel less intimidating? Yes, those are some things to think about. Okay, cool.
Yeah, those are.
Great. Jennifer said she's trying to make a talk for teen girls about their hormones, not too technical. That makes a lot of sense. Yes. And I think that, you know, having teen girls connect symptoms to hormones can be super helpful. So even like giving them a little symptom questionnaire, like, do you experience these symptoms? They can get some opt-in, like, oh yeah, I do experience those symptoms. I didn't know those had to do with my hormones. Yes. So probably focusing on symptoms and doing food focus. Yeah.
There's a
Lori
couple
said, I
questions.
see.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I had like 50 slides. I guess that's too much. My first presentation, I talked for 2 hours. That's too long. It is too long. Yes. So I would keep your presentations. I would not talk for more than 60 minutes with maybe, 45 minutes, 15-minute Q&A, 60 minutes, 15-minute Q&A. That's the longest I would go. How do I find speaking gigs like for corporate wellness? Okay. So getting into the corporate wellness world, that's, I've done maybe 3 corporate wellness talks, but honestly, I would say that I'm not the person to ask on corporate wellness because it's not my gig. Like Abra knows a lot more about that. She's one of our team members. I don't know a lot about corporate wellness. I teach seniors and oftentimes they fall asleep, but not from boring topics, I hope. Ha. I love Matthew Walker's take on that. Have you all read his book on sleep, Why We Sleep? He says in the beginning, if you sleep during this, I'm so happy because you're getting sleep. So please sleep. So you could actually really even make a joke about it or like encourage people to sleep. Seniors need their sleep. So if you need a 5-minute nap during this, that's fine, right? Hannah said, my biggest issue is overstating. Definitely. I work with underserved populations and the topics are very broad. What do you mean overstating? Okay. Oversharing. Yes. It is so common and I do the same thing. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your hurdles, everybody. Thanks for attending. It was great to have you here. Thanks for having me, Amy.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So I will send out the slides and the recording probably tomorrow, and then Rebecca will follow up to send everyone the resources she discussed today. Tina, I saw you had a question about the survey. I'm not sure why it will work. I would just pick CNS or whatever you want to pick as the most appropriate certification. It's mostly for your just to show your participation, so don't worry about that. So the CE survey is in the chat. Let me put it in there one more time just to make sure everyone saw it. We do have some upcoming webinars this month, so be sure to check that out as well. Our next webinar is going to be next week, and we are talking with where are all the clients at with the Nutrition Collective? So that should be a really good one.
Nice. I love
Uh,
it.
Thanks so much, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
Bye.